What's up, everybody? Today we are going to be going over a Albion tier list for Kobold Undercity. This is for the Eden DAoC free shard. There's a lot of hype around Season 3. Everyone's super excited. There's some new classes. Unfortunately, these tier lists aren't going to include those classes. One, because I haven't had any time to go into KU with any of the classes yet, and two, they're still going under a heavy amount of balance. So probably not the best time to slot them in a tier, but we're going to be covering everything else here. So if you don't know, KU is Kobold Undercity. It's a 5-man dungeon on the Eden server that is the basically the end game dungeon where all the best loot drops. So all the best rogues on the server are going to drop there. The dungeon came out about halfway through Season 2. So not everybody knew about it or was running it as soon as it came out because people were already established doing what they were doing. But for Season 3, I have a feeling it's going to be really popular, and everybody has been asking me for group comps and tier lists and what have you. So here we go. We're going to do one for each realm. This one's going to be for Alb, and let's stop wasting time and we'll get right into it. So Armsman. Armsman, most people think, is the go-to tank when it comes to PvE. That's actually not true in my opinion. Armsman is going to be an A tier, still a fantastic tank. It still has everything you need. Super high defense, super high HP. A nice thing about Armsman too is if you're like a solo Armsman that wears a couple of chain pieces, you can actually still tank the dungeon with those chain pieces. Whereas like a hybrid like a Pally, if they have some chain pieces, they're going to get hit really, really hard. So just overall more durable. There are a couple of times where an ad will spawn that can PBA mez the group or something if you're not paying attention. An Armsman bolster for something like that can be super clutch. It can be a wipe saver. But the one downside it doesn't have over the Paladin is it doesn't have celerity. So you're waiting to start DPS a few seconds more on every time you pull, and you multiply that by as many times as you pull for the dungeon, and you know there's a net time loss there. But either way, whether you make an Armsman or a Paladin, you're gonna do just fine. This is basically tiered on like the sweatiest of speed runs, so if you're not looking to speedrun, you're not gonna have any issues going in with an Armsman. The only reason I'd put a Pally over an Arms is just because you can do it faster. But yeah, Armsman, rank A, tier A. Cabalist. So Cabalist, I think Cabalist is like C tier, honestly. If you don't know, all the bosses in KU have a pet fear, so you are going to see the pet classes be ranked pretty low on these lists. Cabalist just gets outslotted by other DPS classes like Wizard, Heretic, even a Theurgist. You don't really need the debuff from the cabbie because you can just run a legendary. The tank can run a legendary with the debuff. It's still a lower value, but you can add one more DPS slot, like I said, a Wizard or a Heretic, and then just use the debuff off the legendary. I think it's like 10% less del value. But their pets are never going to be able to contribute. In fact, I was thinking about putting them in B tier, and in fact, I'm going to leave them in C. There was one time during the mechanics fight where a pet got feared, cabbie pet got feared, and actually ran off and aggroed a trash mob, and we had to clear the trash mob in the middle of the burn phase of mechanics, and it was nuts. So I think C tier is pretty solid for them. Cleric obviously is S tier. It has everything you need. It has the specs you need, it has the resists you need, range, stun. I mean, I don't need to tell you what all these classes do. You can only fit 5 people in a group, it has your specs, it has your heals, stun, it's good. Friar is probably like B tier. No one's ever gonna take a reju Friar because you don't have specs. I mean, I guess they could if everyone charges their specs, but realistically, you have to imagine that people are gonna form groups based on like a copy and paste mentality. So if they see that a group without a reju Friar, or if they see groups never use a reju Friar, they're just going to copy and paste and they're never going to use a reju Friar. A Cleric is always going to beat this slot. However, There is a comp in Alb where you can do a spirit train, where you run like Pally, Reaver, a couple Friars, and I don't know, something like Sorcerer, Cleric. You can only do certain, I think like 5 out of the 6 bosses. You can only do 4 or 5 out of them, but the damage is pretty high and it's really fast. The only downside is you just can't full clear. So that's why they're in B tier instead of like C, is because you can run that melee spirit train comp and it is viable. It's very viable actually. But as far as rejuve, don't plan on it. Heretic, I think we know as far as Heretic goes. In any PvE, they're pretty much S tier. I mean, you can't beat that DPS. And when a Heretic gets rank, my Heretic is like, it's 7L3, something like that. You feel every little realm ding that you get on the Heretic. It's so nice. It's one class where you really feel the power boost. And you take that into KU and it's insane. So 3 out of the 6 bosses in KU actually use Amnesia, which is going to break your UI ramp over and over and over again. It's kind of something the devs learned from Sobekite. So you will have to re-ramp. You won't just be able to push a button and sit there the whole dungeon. But it is still incredibly strong. I mean, I have screenshots critting anywhere from 6,500 up to 7,100 with a Sorc debuff and a good crit. So it's also a fun class to play in PvP, and it is insanely brain dead to XP 1 to 50 on. So if you're looking for a class to get into KU, I would probably roll a Heretic. You don't need a group to get to 50, and learning KU on Heretic is pretty much as easy as learning it on a Wizard. It's just one or two buttons the whole time. So really nice. Heretic S tier for sure. Infiltrator is going to be... It's either C or B. You know what? I'm going to put it in C, and I'll tell you why in a second. I want to put it in B because on paper, Infiltrator is just raw DPS. You can still just use it like a Merc or like a Friar, I guess, or something you were going to use like that. But the reason I put it in C over B is because what I considered in these tiers is not only how they perform in the dungeon, but how likely is someone who's making a group or forming a group going to group you. And let's be honest, nobody's going to group an Infiltrator unless you're the one making the group. So I think that actually knocks them down from B to C in my opinion. I did do a run one time that was pretty fun with a decent rank Infiltrator who went Pain whatever and Viper 5. And we actually brought a cabbie to debuff his poisons for him, and it was pretty fun. But it was by no means meta, and it wasn't very fast, and but it is possible. So it just goes to show you that they designed KU really well in the sense that you can pretty much bring anything. Merc is really good. Merc is, I would say, A tier, just for the reason of being they are pure raw DPS. You can get a couple of fire legendaries and run the fire train, so like a normal KU comp would be something like Paladin, Cleric, Sorc, Tick, Wizard. So if you could replace the Wizard normally and you do run the Merc, so you still have the Tick, you can still run heat legendaries, you do lots of damage. You don't have to run Slam because the Heretic can Slam for you, so you can go full DPS. It's really nice, really straightforward. Never have to worry about power is one of the best things in that dungeon. I'll tell you what. It is amazing not having to worry about power. Wizard. We just talked about it. Wizard is probably still A tier. It's just super easy DPS. Bolts are great for bursting down adds, which is a little tip that you should keep. If you're playing Wizzy and KU, save your bolts for the adds. I mean, obviously use them in your DPS rotation, but when you're expecting adds, that's when you want to that's when you want to burn them down with the bolts. You can go fire or ice. Better to go fire. One, like I said, for the bolts, and two, when you go fire, you get to stand in one spot pretty much, respecting mechanics, obviously. You get to stand and just DPS the whole entire time. When you're ice, you have to worry about hitting the perfect PBAE and being on top of everything. So there's a lot more ping-ponging positional-wise. So just be brain dead and go Wizzy, especially on season launch. It's going to be nice to just sit back there and hit your buttons. And you basically have nothing to do other than assist DPS. So it's really low stress in there for a wizard. Wizard and Tick, low stress, easy to learn classes. Minstrel. Dude. Yeah, this class is crazy in there. Psych. This is the worst class. I don't even need an F tier if there was no Minstrel, but there's a Minstrel. So, as we discussed, pet fear. So they're not going to be able to use any pets in there. They do 0 DPS. They provide basically 0 utility other than like an insta stun that might be nice. Their casted stun is way too slow. They're trash. Their songs aren't going to help you at all in there, other than getting from the front back to the boss you were at because you wiped, and they're going to give you speed to get there quicker. That's pretty much what they're good for. I've never ran a KU with a Minstrel. I never will run KU with a Minstrel. So, mini players, roll something else if you want to farm KU. Necromancer is going to be in C tier. They don't bring a lot that no other class can, right? Like, if you had a Heretic, I guess, you could feed him power or something. I don't know. I mean, my Heretic has never needed power in there. However, at the start of a season, when nobody has templates and full siphon and all power charges, Necromancers are actually really good to have in a dungeon for that power transfer. The downside of that is, after the first couple weeks, when everyone is templated, they're no longer needed. You can still get them in there to ride a spirit train or something like that, but the pet fear doesn't work on the Necro pet, which is nice. However, there's a pretty, I guess it's not game breaking, but it's very annoying bug. There's a boss in KU, which the mechanic is she teleports you to a new location 5 times, and if you are on a Necro, I don't remember if it's the Necro and the pet gets left behind when everyone gets ported, or just the pet. But long story short, you would have to drop your pet and resummon it before you got ported. So that's doing that 5 times in one fight. And if you wipe, then you're doing it 3 or 4 times another time on the next attempt. It's just very annoying. So that for that reason, they're pretty low tier when it comes to group ability in KU. Paladin, S tier. Paladin is just amazing. It's fun to play in there. They actually just got buffed with the new Eden Season 3 patch notes, so you don't have to twist anymore. So you just run 8 chance and you just let it fly. They have celerity all the time, which means that you can literally run in, hit something twice, and then we can start DPS on it immediately without having to worry about pulling aggro. Super durable with their AF. Just, yeah, better than an Armsman, in my opinion, for tanking PvE. Yeah, just Paladin's great. Reaver, I would put in the same class, or the same tier as Friar. Yeah, because I can't put him in A tier because they don't match the DPS of Merc and Wizard, and they don't match the ability to tank as the Armsman and the Paladin. I think B is fine. And the reason they're in B with Friar is because they also ride that melee spirit train. Outside of that, if it's not my group and I'm tanking, you're probably not going to see a Reaver. However, they did just get a damage boost in the Eden patch notes, so that means there's going to be more Reavers when the season launches, which means you might see more of them in groups just naturally. But I wouldn't put them above anything. This isn't ordered, by the way. I forgot to mention this. So Cleric isn't better than Heretic, which is better than Paladin. They're just all S tier. They're all A tier. So Friar wouldn't be better than Reaver. It's all the same. Scout, I'm putting in the same tier as Infi and Necro, C tier. It's for the same reason as Infiltrator. Scouts can do a lot of damage. They can still ride the Elemental train, but they bring 0 utility. and no one's going to group you. And if you're a scout forming a KU group, I don't think anyone's going to join you. I hate to say it, but it is what it is. I've had people tell me scouts can be great in there. I've yet to see it. If you want to show me, please be my guest. Sorc is S tier. It has everything you need for the dungeon. Strength con debuff, elemental debuff, a rude, mez, demez. I don't think I need to say anymore. It's just a staple, honestly. And last, Theurgist. Theurgist would probably be in B tier. We did discuss that all the bosses in here have pet fear, so they cannot use their pets, and they amnesia as well. So this dungeon is basically anti-Theurgist. The only reason they're still in B tier over Cabby and Infi is they can still run a debuff train just fine, and they just spec air and they just go spirit, and their spirit nuke hits super hard. So you would just basically be a wizzy without the bolts, which is why I have them one step below wizard here. But this is going to be the final tier list for Albion KU. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. I'd be interested to hear what you see. I'd be interested to hear what you say. I'm doing all this in one take, mind you. I didn't want to do any editing, so mind the mistakes there. But anyways, I hope you guys are super excited for Eden Season 3. I know I am. Let me know what you plan on maining down below, and let's see, next maybe we'll do Midgard for our tier list. So stay tuned for that. Peace.